All right, here's what we know so far. Almost 3 hours into free agency, or so, 2 or 3 hours. I lose track of time. And remember, in my addled brain, keeping track of multiple things all at once, sometimes difficult. The Texans have not made a huge splash whatsoever. The most recent one that I just saw a few seconds ago is Tremon Smith, the cornerback, who was with the Texans back in the dark days in 2001 and 2022 and got a little bit of playing time, is signing with the Texans on a small deal. Derek Barnett is back in the fold, and Braxton Berrios. Braxton Berrios, who aligns with the strategy they're following this year of alliteration. Christian Kirk is a hell of a name in terms of alliteration. But also, I guess, so far the guy that titillates me most on what we expected to be a pretty muted first day for the Texans is the fact that the Texans got Sheldon Rankins back in the fold. So Sheldon Rankins, a defensive lineman, brings at the very least a guy that you could feel comfortable about being a starter on the defense. They didn't really have anybody on the depth chart that you looked at as, okay, yeah, this guy's a 16 or 17 game starter. Sheldon Rankins is that guy. Left for free agency for the Bengals last year after a 1-year deal with the Texans. Got a better deal and a better offer with the Bengals than he had before. I think he comes back into the fold where, hey, on a 1-year deal, it's worked out pretty well for a lot of Texans defensive tackles. They can choose it as a prove-it year. Just off the top of my head, Grady Jarrett was released by the Atlanta Falcons, so that adds into the mix another potential defensive tackle that the Texans might be looking at in free agency. But so far, nothing overly excited. If you remember, like Braxton Berrios, man, didn't he make a few big splashes a few years ago? He did with the Jets. Most of these highlights are of him as a receiver, but as a returner is where I would expect him to do most of his damage. He's about 5'9", maybe 200 pounds or so. Not a big guy whatsoever, but shifty and speedy. And some of his highlights I had to cut short on this because they take so long to develop. He does have big strike capability. It's a 1-year, $2 million deal. He'll be competing for a roster role, so it's nothing to get overly excited or to drool about too much. Here's one of the returns that he had a few years back for the Jets. I had to cut this short because it took 10 seconds to run. YouTube doesn't want you going longer than 6 seconds on the live stream. So Braxton Berrios picked up off the reclamation pile, or he's a reclamation project perhaps. Sheldon Rankins, I am excited to have him back. Sheldon, he's got a level of athleticism and an ability to get upfield, kind of knife through offensive lines in a way that none of the guys on the defensive interior, other than Danico Autry when he was playing in there, has the ability to do. So I think he can be part of an improved pass rush on the interior. Some of the things that he does that could really scratch an itches like this, his ability, that was a second effort play because he had a first shot at him. His ability to, when a quarterback is flushed, chase him down on the sideline, because we saw that be a problem at times last year. But I like Sheldon Rankins as a player. It was kind of a disappointing year for him in Cincinnati. He had injury issues, and then he had viral meningitis that knocked him out for damn near half the season. But I think even in this highlight reel, I put this together a couple days ago when I thought he might sign. You see a couple instances of him chasing a quarterback who's been flushed out of the pocket out to the sideline. So subtle and mild improvements, nothing that's a huge headline as of yet. And we'll wait and see. Feel free to update me because, as many of you know, Twitter is down. And it's interesting because I try not to follow Twitter too much during all this stuff because there's just so many different rabbits to chase. But some of the free agency trackers, you go from ESPN will have some names on there, but then Pro Football Focus will have other names. My best updates so far for Texan updates have been my Bleacher Report app, actually. They're the ones that first gave me the breaking news about Tremon Smith. If you want to think about how muted this has been so far, Tremon Smith and Braxton Berrios aren't even on the rankings of free agency rankings for a lot of these guys. What does our cap space look like after the restructuring and redesigned contracts? That is an excellent question, and I always try to update it as frequently as possible because it changes. So many of these deals are coming down. Right now, or at least as of this morning, the Texans had $4.4 million in cap space. That Shaq Mason cut, because it's a June 1st cut, you don't get the bulk of the savings until after June 1st. You can designate it a June 1st cut right now, but you don't get at least 50%. I've seen different reporting of this, or the whole $9 million that you'll save against the cap until after June 1st. So as teams make some of these deals that don't have to be official for the next couple days, there's sometimes restructures or renegotiations that haven't been announced yet, or ones that they're gonna make, that it's a little bit of it's hard to chase down and pin it down. They don't have a boatload of cap space, and I think they'll probably renegotiate a few more guys. Yeah, might as well bring back Malik Collins. Rankin's gonna bounce back. Oh, Twitter's back, some people are claiming. The other, Sean Pendergast had texted me and said that the Texans are reportedly going after Dre Greenlaw, which would be interesting. And I'm not exactly sure what that would look like, other than that, man, some of the coverage ability of the linebackers, as exciting as we get about Toa and the progress he's made. He, still a second-year player and still improving, but was a liability in coverage at times. Azeez Al-Shaair is a liability in coverage at times, particularly in the championship game. So I'm intrigued by that. I think that we'll probably get the biggest bang, just like we did last year, days 2 and 3 and 4. Some of the defensive tackles, for instance, where I'm not. Let me pull up the PFF tracker because they've got some of the contract numbers on here. I'm not overly. I don't think they're going to make a huge. I don't think they're going to make a huge splash with defensive tackles, but some of the deals that I've seen are actually not too bad. Let's see, free agency tracker. And give me any updates you see on any other players. See, it seems like the coaching staff doesn't trust Christian Harris or Dameon Pierce to play some good snaps. The Dameon Pierce one, we asked Nick Caserio about this during the season and said, why isn't Dameon getting any snaps? And Nick's response was because Joe Mixon's really, really good. The Texans weren't really pressed into a position this year where, Joe Mixon was out and we didn't get much out of any of them. I think what they are genuinely thinking is that Dameon Pierce, it might be a whole lot better with a different offensive coordinator. He was a hell of a lot better with Pep Hamilton as his offensive coordinator than he was with Bobby Slowick. And everything you've heard from the coaches, the GM, everybody else is that, hey, the offense this year is going to be tailored based on the strengths of your personnel. And we spent 2 years seeing if Dameon could kind of get it to click in Bobby Slowick's system. And they put some things in there that were designed, or they called some plays that were better for Dameon Pierce, especially towards the end of the season. He had that, like you saw some evidence of that working. I think that they still think that there's a lot of good in Dameon Pierce. There's not really any good running backs to go after in free agency. That's, the guys that are bigger names tend to be guys who are older, getting injured, or, like Nick Chubb with his injury history, J.K. Dobbins. That's kind of the tier that you'd be looking at right now. So I think the draft is probably where they go for with any notable running backs. Yeah, I thought after the Tennessee game that Pierce would get more snaps. It's right at the end of the season, and it wasn't like Joe Mixon was banged up or injured in the. If you look at backup running backs on teams that don't have a genuine two-headed monster the way the Lions do, for instance, the backup running back typically doesn't get a whole lot of carries. But yeah, just as a rhythm change-up or something, I thought we'd see more Dameon Pierce. Justin Reed, I don't think that they would probably go after Justin Reed just because he's going to make too much money. I think that right now, if you look at the secondary, they've got 3 really good young players, good/promising young players. In order of how good they are right now, I would say obviously Derek Stingley, and then Kalen Bullock, I would say, is a guy who's ascending, and then Lassiter right there in the middle. I don't know why I ranked it that way. Obviously, Stingley, then Lassiter, then Bullock. But the 2 young guys, I think, are on a very good trajectory. And I think you can live with either competition at the other safety spot, a rookie. Maybe they sign a free agent of some sort, but I don't think it's going to be Justin Reed. They'll look. Caserio has surprised us plenty of times before, but I don't think that. I don't think that's one of the objects that they're really going to target in free agency. Yeah, I want O-line guys, and the biggest thing I tell you about the O-line is that there are a bunch of guards that are available for probably not that much. If you think of, let's see, last year, and I know I've brought this up before, so let me pull their, okay. So last year, Kevin Zeitler, who ended up having a really good year for the Lions. I'm an admirer of his work in the entire Detroit Lions offensive line this year. Last year, he played on a one-year, $6 million contract. You know, there's guys like Brandon Scherf is out there. Tevin Jenkins or Mekhi Becton might get more money. He probably will get a much better deal, especially coming after playing guard for the Eagles. Looked a lot better than he ever did as a tackle for the Jets. I think that the guys that are not even journeyman veterans, just aging veterans, but still solid players, I would get genuinely excited about one of those guys. I think, let's see, I showed you Braxton Berrios. I showed you Sheldon Rankins. Just as a dose or a reminder, this is from a Kansas City Chiefs game where Christian Kirk had over 100 yards a couple years ago. So just as a reminder that, look, the guy's got a shiftiness to him. Why is this not going? There we go. And he's a genuine slot receiver. I think that's one of the differences between him and Tank Dell. Tank Dell played more on the outside than he did as a slot. Christian Kirk, when he's healthy, is a veteran slot receiver who can hopefully take advantage of a lot of the stuff underneath, a lot of things in the quick game that we couldn't get going last year. It was one of the more frustrating things about Bobby Slowick was they were seeing all this cover two and not doing anything to kind of exploit it. We don't know how good an offensive coordinator Caley's going to be, but I think you start to think about, oh, okay, yeah, he was in New England, and man, they did some good things with Julian Edelman and Wes Welker before him. Don't start thinking about Julian Edelman, or don't think about Wes Welker too much when you think about Braxton Berrios coming from the Dolphins. Not the same scenario by a long shot. And I saw that Milton Williams went to the Panthers. I don't think the Texans were going to be in a good position for us. As far as Petrie and Zeus, you might be asking because Petrie is called a safety on the depth chart. He doesn't play. He's playing nickelback a lot, so he's not a safety. I mean, there's times where he's lined up as a safety, but think of him as an extra DB, but not the safety. He's playing nickel cornerback a lot. I think they do need more help for guys that can line up and when they need it, a genuine cornerback to play that slot corner. That's something that, again, you're not going to go out and get huge in free agency. So, yeah, Petrie's still fine for us. It's just that he's not back there. He's not playing strong safety. He's playing nickelback. Should we be concerned with a lack of moves for the offensive line? No. And, again, because I think that they feel good about Blake Fisher. This is my thought, is that there's a chance that they look at Titus Howard as a guard, and I'm actually pretty optimistic about that, given the right offensive coordinator, and if Titus is going to genuinely embrace the role of guard, where he did some good things in those last few games this year. I think what we might end up seeing is a George Fant style signing where they feel good about Blake Fisher, but he still played like a rookie. He wouldn't have been a guy that the way he played, he did some good things, but if he doesn't progress and doesn't get better, I'd feel real nervous having him as the right tackle all season long. So if you think about George Fant and how they got him, he ended up playing much better than we would have anticipated. That way, at least, you've got a swing tackle who can start if Blake Fisher doesn't start, or if Blake Fisher gets injured, you still need a swing tackle. So that's my inkling right now, is I think you get a journeyman / swing tackle type of guy in free agency, and then they're going to sign at least a guard. I'm more optimistic than I know a lot of you are about Jarrett Patterson and Juice Scruggs and them competing for a starting center spot where, Patterson was drafted as a guy that could play guard or center. Scruggs was drafted to play center. I don't think there's a single part of him that I like at guard, and he really hasn't looked good when he's been there. But I think there's still a lot of upside with both of those guys. I'm willing to blame Bobby Slowick and the way things were operating for a lot of stuff right now. And I'm not just trying to have a witch burning and act like, oh yeah, that's the source of all our evil. There was a lot of stuff that was difficult in terms of the way everything was operating last year. So I've seen enough out of Jarrett Patterson that I think there's a lot of upside out there, and I think that Juice Scruggs as well. The guard is really the spot that I want to see them address in free agency. Let's see. I hate everything you're saying about the O-line. That's the same patch it together with journeyman bullshit that got us here in the first place. Jason, Kevin Zeitler, who I was just talking about, was one of the best guards in the NFL last year. Tell me exactly. Okay, tell me what you want. Jason, tell me what you want. Instead of my bullshit, tell me what you want them to do with their cap space right now. Tell me what you want them to do. Okay? All right, tell me. Now, also, show me the offensive line. Show me the team in the NFL that has nothing but all pros at all 11 spots. Show me. Show it to me. Show me where all those guys out there are just got. And I'm asking you to bring in a guard of the style that the Detroit Lions had last year, that they signed on a one-year, $6 million year contract. I'm saying maybe Mekhi Becton, who played for a Super Bowl championship team last year. Tell me exactly what's bullshit about a plan where you go out and find good, solid offensive linemen. Do we need not to think about the plethora of solid offensive lines there are that aren't replete with 5 first-round draft picks and 5 high-priced dudes? That's not the way football operates. You got to fill out an entire damn roster. My God. Did you do it yet? Did you do it? Did you give it to me, Jason? Give it to me. Where is it? Where's my non-bullshit plan? All right, let's see. Draft 5 goddamn of men in the... Okay, so you can't... 5 goddamn OL men in the first 5 picks. All right, good. Yeah, so you feel good about defensive tackles. I bet you feel awesome about the tight ends. You think we got a good actual outside guy at wide receiver right now? Okay? You feel good about all those guys? Good. I'm glad we're all in agreement. 5 offense. Is there more than one position group on a football team? See a Bo. Well, you're drunk. You can't be this drunk this relatively early in the afternoon and expect me to take you seriously, Jason. Yeah, you're disgusting me, damn it. Yeah, we're friends. I couldn't type it fast enough. No, they were aggressive last year, man, in free agency. And now they're in a position where they gotta try to make really good selections in the draft. And let's not act like, oh, everything's all dismal and it's 2020 or 2021 all of a sudden. I honestly get what I really hope for. And right now is the time where it's easy to get agitated because you want big names and you want all these things that you imagine are going to be immediate improvements and upgrades. Let's say DK Metcalf, for instance, and I know I've made this point before. Okay, you bring DK Metcalf in, and what would that have done for the Texans to make them a better team compared to last year when at various times they might have had Stephon Diggs and Nico Collins or all 3 of those guys out there if C.J. Stroud can't throw the football because he doesn't have time, if they can't run the ball. And good offensive lines do not have to be just a bunch of all-pro type players. They've got to be well coached. They've got to be solid. And you've got to get some upside from your younger guys. I do think there's a very good chance they draft an interior offensive lineman sometime in the first 2 rounds. But I think they've got to spend, they've got to take care of business on the defensive line as well. All right, I'm glad we moved beyond that, Jason. I'm gonna try to just regroup a little bit. Not from my exchange with Jason, but with just trying to figure out exactly what's going on around the league, and hopefully in a few hours we'll have a few more moves from the Texans. But I will ask you to brace yourself for the fact that just like last year where everybody was really, really upset after day one, this takes, if you're doing it right and you're not going after the top of the market guys, which by definition is always an overpayment because you're paying more than anybody else is willing to pay for some of those free agents. We'll see. We'll see how this roster looks by the end of the day and by the end of the week.